here we are, Phoenix, Arizona. Sirius XM for you these days. For starters, just kind of tell people where they can find you, where they can listen to you these days.
Yeah, I'm doing NFL radio on Channel 88. I do a show from noon to 3. I do it Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, mostly during the NFL season, and I really enjoy it. I've been doing it with Bruce Murray for a number of years. I worked with Adam Shine before that. I still do stuff on CBS Sports Network. I do a show called NFL Monday QB. So I'm around the NFL. I watch all the games. I go to as many as I can, but I love it. I tell people all the time, I graduated from college in 1987. I was in the league for 17 years. I've been broadcasting for 18 years. I never worked a day in my life. It's like stealing money.
That's the plan, right?
It's like stealing money. I don't make any money now, hardly. Just kidding. But I love what I do, and it's think about it. We get paid to talk about football. Yeah. It's a pretty good gig.
Yeah, you can't get much better than that other than maybe playing in the league. But
that was fun.
Yeah. Before we get into kind of the Super Bowl stuff here, I want to ask you about how things ended with Derek Carr. Did you think that was fair to him and he stepped away and they're kind of moving on, going in a different direction? Do you think that's right for the Raiders?
The question of whether it's fair or not, it's hard to say because you're not in the building every day. You're not able to evaluate, his body of work. You don't know what the relationships are like. You don't know what the coaching staff and the organization is really looking for, the contractual situation, all that kind of stuff. I would simply say this. It's a results-oriented business, and he had a losing record as a starting quarterback. He's been with a number of different coaches. Life isn't always fair. Sometimes what happens at the quarterback, because I say it all the time, what happens at the quarterback position a lot of times is impacted by what's going on around them. Is their offensive line any good? Do they have a good defense? There's so many different factors. I think he's a talented player. I think he's going to quickly find a new home. The question for the Raiders is, what are they going to do at the quarterback position? It's not like there's, 5 or 6 really good qualified veteran quarterbacks out there on the street. And then when you look at the draft, there's some question marks about some of these players coming out in the draft. And if you're Josh McDaniels, the head coach, and Dave Ziegler, it's not like today's NFL is very different. It's not like you got 5 or 6 years to turn around a program. You better get it fixed quickly. We fired 6 guys this year. We fired 10 head coaches last year, and we fired 7 the year before. It's a results-oriented business.
Yeah, Rich, you were actually on hand there in Las Vegas, week 17, I guess it was, Chiefs-Raiders, lighting the torch. You're a former Raider, a former NFL MVP, but also a former Kansas City Chief, where in 95 and 97 we had a chance to maybe have you play in some playoff games to help get us through.
Maybe some different results.
Some different results. We don't need to have to live in the past.
That was painful.
But what was it like, though? I mean, Marty Schottenheimer is someone that we met and we've talked to about this kind of towards the end of his life. And Marty was such a hands-on guy in everything that he did, but it seems like the quarterback position was always one that he maybe struggled with trying to find the right mix, the right balance, and maybe that also went with Carl Peterson and their relationship as well.
Yeah, I don't know that they ever really had the answer there. That's in a way, it's...
Well, we did. His name was Rich Gannon.
No, but I'm saying, in a way, Marty won a lot of football games with a lot of different quarterbacks. I mean, you go back to Steve DeBerg and Joe Montana and Dave Craig and Steve Bono and Elvis Gerbach, and they won a lot of football games with a lot of different quarterbacks, and that's not easy to do. So, I honestly, in all the years that I played, Marty Schottenheimer was the best head coach I ever played for. I mean, he was amazing. He could coach any position group. He could install the offensive plan, the defensive plan, the special teams plan. He's a great communicator, wonderful teacher. He believed in structure and discipline. I had the most fun playing with those teams in Kansas City. When I went to Oakland, it was a much different scenario, a much different situation, a lot less structure, a lot less discipline, and quite frankly, it was a lot more heartache just to try and work with that. But the thing that was frustrating for me is I felt like I gave us the best chance to win. Nothing against Steve Bono and Elvis Gerbach. I thought, I was the best quarterback, and I never really got a chance to play. I really got a chance to play when those guys were hurt. Elvis got hurt for a while there.
Bono was really 3 interceptions
what was really disappointing was I think I went 7. We won. I played 7 or 8 of the last games. I think we won 7 or 8 of them. Yeah. 7 of the 8. And yet we get ready to play Denver, and he starts Elvis Gerbach. And I knew Elvis wasn't ready to play.
We saw him in that Saints game. I think the last week of the season he came back and kind of struggled.
His conditioning wasn't very good. And again, it's not his fault. I mean, he couldn't. He had some issues, and I just thought that you put a quarterback. Your job as a head coach is to put players in a position to have a chance to be successful. I think he put him out there. Elvis ran out of gas. We had to take some timeouts because he couldn't get the play out of it. He couldn't call the play. And we lost to a team that we were better than.
Yeah,
and that
who we
team
beat just a few weeks
before. That team went on to win a Super Bowl. And honestly, our defense played well enough for us to win that game. We disappointed offensively. We didn't do anything offensively. And honestly, we were good enough offensively. We had the players to get that job done. What held us back was the quarterback position. And that's frustrating. The good news is the Chiefs no longer have that issue.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of the last thing on the old days, then we'll get to the Super Bowl here. Marty Schottenheimer for the Hall of Fame. A lot of people say no, he never won the big game. He struggled in the playoffs, whether it's Lynn Elliott and Marlon McCree with the Chargers, fumbling the ball back to the Patriots. I mean, he turned around the Browns when he took over, turned around the Chiefs when he took over, turned around the Chargers, wanted to go with Drew Brees. General manager A.J. Smith wanted to go with Phillip Rivers instead. Just what do you kind of make of that, and do you think he should be in the Hall of Fame someday?
I think when you look at Marty's body of work, I think he's certainly Hall of Fame worthy. I would say that I know how difficult a place that is to get into. They're hallowed grounds. It seems like it gets more and more competitive as we get more and more players that are eligible. But Marty had an amazing run, and I think the lack of postseason success is probably what's holding him back. I think Marty won at least 200 games in his career, and I think. As I said, he was not a good head coach. He was a phenomenal head coach, and he did it with so many different players. I think the biggest transformation is with Cleveland, and then he came to Kansas City. Guys, the Chiefs were bad, really bad, and he turned them into a perennial power. I mean, we dominated the AFC when Marty was the head coach, and so. We miss him. I'm excited for his son Brian, who's just took the job with Mike McCarthy, a former Kansas City Chief coach, and I'm really close with both of those guys. So I'm happy that they're reunited.
Well, Rich, it's Super Bowl 57. I want to go back real quick, though, to tie this together to the Week 17 of the 2019 season. You're calling the game there with Kevin Harlan, our good friend, and you famously asked, what game are you calling? Because what he was calling was the Patriots losing, giving the Chiefs the 2 seed. The Chiefs wind up winning the Super Bowl, and here we are 3 years later. Chiefs are in 3 out of 4 Super Bowls, and just what this organization has done under Andy Reid, under Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce. I heard you in an interview earlier say the team that runs the ball might have the advantage here, and so does that mean we need to go home? Because we know that's going to be the Eagles.
No, I just think that when you look at a game and you look at the matchups and you start to try and break it down, I think these are 2 really well coached teams, 2 good. These are teams that both went 16-3. I just saw a stat that I thought was pretty interesting. You guys probably have it. Sometimes when I see a stat that I find interesting, I'll say, it's interesting. I should probably take a picture of it. But there's a stat that said how close these teams are. Both teams went with a 16-3 overall record. Both offenses scored 546 points this year.
Yeah.
Both teams had 6 All-Pros, including a Kelce brother, and both teams were the number 1 seed. And I just think that we're going to see a really good. You're going to see teams that match up well. I think the interesting matchup to me is this Kansas City offensive line against the Eagles defensive line. The Eagles led the NFL in sacks this year. That group has got to really play well. And I think Patrick still has the ability, even with the ankle, to move around, create, and manufacture some plays. But that offensive line is going to be under the microscope because you're facing a team that's so deep and talented along that defensive line.
You said move around, create, manufacture plays. I mean, what did you see in the AFC Championship game?
He could still move. He could still move well enough. He wasn't 100% clearly, but he can still move, and he can protect himself. And I think he still, when he has to, we saw him scramble on that last. I mean, all of a sudden I'm thinking to myself, wait a second, that didn't look like a guy that was hurt to me. But I think he's managing the injury as best he can. Now, with 2 extra weeks to prepare, 2 extra weeks of treatment, we may see a different Patrick Mahomes on Sunday night.
Last thing, Rich, we saw the AFC and really specifically the AFC West go all in this year to try to compete with the Chiefs, to try to knock the Chiefs off that pedestal. Khalil Mack goes to the Chargers. We saw the Raiders bring in Devontae Adams.
How'd that work out?
I know.
Russell Wilson, now Sean Payton.
And so the AFC now, as the Chiefs now, at another Super Bowl with more cap space, with Mahomes, their quarterback's already paid. The Bengals got to pay Burrow.
Lots of draft picks coming up.
So where does this say? Does it look like this is the Chiefs just on into the into the stratosphere? How does somebody come in and end this? Not that I want them to.
Well, it kind of reminds you a little bit of what happened in New England for 2 decades with Belichick and Brady. And I think when you look at Andy Reid, if you're Andy Reid, why would you ever step away? I think he's having so much fun calling plays and working with Patrick Mahomes. And I think Patrick Mahomes is the best player. I didn't say the best quarterback. I think he's the best player in the NFL. I think his ability to, be so consistent week in and week out. I don't think he gets enough credit for what he has from the neck up. I think he's a brilliant player. He understands situational football so well. He takes good care of the football. He's a great leader, and he's a great teammate. His teammates love playing for him. So, I think he just. And the other thing is, I think there's a certain humility that Andy and Patrick and Clark Hunt and everyone involved in that organization has. They realize that there's no guarantees. They come to work every day with that lunch pail, mentality, the blue collar mentality. I think that's important. And the other thing that I do know about Andy and Patrick, they love competing. They love to go out and compete. I think it's going to be a great Super Bowl on Sunday night.
One quick thing to add on before we let you go, Rich. We promise we will. But just kind of, this may not be a quick answer for you, but how did they do this without Tyreek Hill? People picking them to finish 4th in the division with all the additions. How did they do this without Tyreek Hill, a generational talent?
Well, I think it speaks volumes about the system of football that they have, to be able to plug in other players. And, I think you look at what they've done with Valdez-Scantling and a bunch of these other guys, that Juju Smith-Schuster, that all have come in and at different times have played really, really well. The one constant has been Travis Kelce. I mean, I've watched every game the Chiefs have played this year, and I'm still trying to figure out who's covering them, how they're covering them. It always starts in all the production meetings that I've ever been to when I've done Chiefs games. When you talk to the defensive coordinator for the other team, first question: how do you stop Patrick? Well, how do you stop Travis Kelce? And there's a lot of different answers. None of them ever seem to work. And I think in terms of important players in our game. If I just said that Patrick Mahomes is the best player in the NFL, I would think one of the most important players in the NFL is Travis Kelce. I don't know how you stop him. I talked to Jonathan Gannon, the Eagles defensive coordinator, a bunch of players, they have a good answer. We're not going to stop him. What we have to do is when he catches a 5-yard ball, we can't let him go 40 yards.
Spin out of it like he always does.
We got to get him on the ground and keep the 5-yard catch to a 7 or 8 yard gain and not a 40-yard gain. That's the key with a guy like Travis Kelce, because he can create separation, but I think he does most his ability to do damage after the catch, yards after catch, yards after contact. He's not an easy tackle on the open field.
Better than Tony Gonzalez?
Oh boy, look, I'm never comfortable comparing players. Tony was a phenomenal player.
He was, yes.
It's like saying, I saw this Dan Orlovsky guy say, who's the 5 best quarterbacks in the history of football. I mean, you
gotta have Dan Marino in there.
Well, like Joe Montana,
yes.
Sammy Baugh, and again,
Otto Graham.
Yeah. It's like, how do you and even I should say Patrick Mahomes is the greatest player that look. The guy's he's not even 30 yet. Let's
27 years old.
Let's give him a break, would you? But as a society, we're all into these comparisons. Who's the greatest? Who's the greatest basketball player? When we get to football, it's a team sport, and I don't know why we have to say who the best quarterbacks are. If you ask me who the top 4 or 5 quarterbacks, I could probably tell you in today's game. I think who they are.
Yeah.
But it changes week to week. But I do know this: the guy in Kansas City, it doesn't seem like it ever changes. It's week to week. He's always at the top of the leaderboard, and I think that's a real privilege, and it's a luxury to have. Not every team. One of my former teams, as you know, the Raiders, are in the market for a quarterback, and that's not where you want to be this time of the year.
Rich, it's been an honor. Thanks so much for joining us once again. I guess we'll see you in Vegas next year.
Yes.
We'll have our sign
change
for you
with a different sign.
We will. We'll get casinos in there.
The best thing is we're going to bring you your long-awaited award from 1997. We have it. We're going to bring it next year. Your sexiest man, 1997.
Oh, that's right.
Sexiest athlete.
It's finally coming to you.
Those people from People Magazine. I'm still annoyed.
You can see it. Rich Gannon right here. Thank you so much,
Always
sir.
a pleasure.
You guys
Thank
are the best. Thanks, guys.